Welcome to Quilting on the Side, the podcast where we uncover the secrets to turning your passion for quilting into a profitable side hustle.
I'm Tori from the Quilt Patch by Tori.
And I'm Andy from True Blue Quilts. And together, we're your co-hosts on this exciting journey of creativity, entrepreneurship, and all things quilting.
We're here to help you navigate the world of quilt pattern design, course creation, digital marketing, and running an online quilt business. We've been through the ups and downs ourselves, so we know what it takes to make money from your favorite hobby.
That's right, Tori. We're going to share our experiences on how we've grown our businesses while balancing family with other paying work responsibilities. It's not always easy, but it's definitely possible. Welcome to Quilting on the Side. We have a really special episode for you this week in honor of Valentine's Day. We decided to bring in our loved ones and give you a family perspective to this whole entrepreneur quilting business scene. So, Tori, tell us who you have with us.
I've invited my husband Ryan on to talk about his perspective of what it's like to support a small business owner or an entrepreneur. So Ryan, would you like to introduce yourself?
I would love to. So, name is Ryan McElwain. A little bit about me. I've been in the Army for about 10 years. Before that, I spent about 10 years working as an independently contracted personal fitness trainer for a couple of gyms over in out of Bakersfield, California, and really enjoyed that. So I had, I guess you could say I had my own little experience working as an entrepreneur myself. So that helps me see the Tori's business through her eyes a little bit, because I had my own little foray into that there for about 10 years or so, and I loved it. And I'm glad that Tori's getting a chance to do that for herself as well.
Good. So is anyone in your family a quilter, Ryan? Like on your side of the family, not Tori, and since you've been married, but like mom, grandma, that.
Yeah, my mom did a little bit. She did a couple a couple t-shirt quilts, a couple memory quilts for us, and she was always pretty handy. She would always make our Halloween costumes. We always had homemade Halloween costumes every year whenever I was a kid. So our costumes were like the best, and that's why part of the reason why I love Halloween so much, because we always had the best costumes, and my mom would just be able to make all these cool stuff. This was back in like the late 80s and early 90s when like if you went to the store and bought your Halloween costume, it was garbage, you know. But if you had like the real good homemade costumes, like my mom was able to make, you always won all the costume contests and stuff. It's cool,
right? And you got always, the big candy bars for.
That's right. And your costume was better than your friends. And that was the important thing.
Yep.
Paper mache, Ninja Turtle shells, the whole bit.
Fun. So Ryan, what's been the best part of Tori having a side business?
So I would say the first thing that jumps to my mind selfishly is, so whenever she first started doing this a couple years ago, when after our son would go to bed, she would go into her quilting studio, her quilting office, and she would start doing all these things for her side business. And like I didn't have anything to do, so I would just sit in there and I would lay on the floor just like bored out of my mind, and like so I just so it gave me the time and I would say the inspiration to start my own, not my own, well, a little bit of my own business, but my starting a new hobby for myself, which ended up being miniature painting, something that I always wanted to do. So seeing her, being creative and using that creative outlet, made me want to go pursue the things that I had always wanted to do creatively for the last few years, but just had always had excuses not to, or whatever, to not do. I'm like, well, if you're going to go do that, well, I'm going to go do this thing over here, and we'll both just do our creative little thing, in our own little corners of the universe, and it's been fun.
Now, for anyone who doesn't know what miniatures are, can you explain what that is?
So primarily miniature painting are like board game pieces. So if you're not familiar with it, board game pieces have come a long way in the last like 20 years or so, and that they have these little tiny, usually they're about like inch and a half tall, depending on the scale that they use, but they're really highly detailed, and you can just paint these miniatures however you want to. I usually do like some Star Wars or miniatures that are based off of my old favorite movies from back in the day, from the 80s and 90s, like Ghostbusters, and it's a couple of zombie games and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
that's kind of what I've enjoyed doing for the last couple of years, and I ended up turning that into a little bit of a side hustle by painting for other people. Ended up getting a 3D printer, so sometimes I print off these things and paint them and sell them and stuff. Not to the level of what Tori's been doing, obviously, but just a teeny tiny little side hustle.
Yep. Well, that's great, and there's really fun stuff you can do with that 3D printer. And there was some crossover, I remember, with Tori, your 3D printer expertise and Tori's quilt business. So how did that crossover happen?
That was the quilt clips, if I remember right, the really big ones. So usually what happens whenever it comes to 3D printing, I'm not smart enough to engineer stuff myself, but there's a whole internet full of people who are smart enough. And so she's like, hey, can you 3D print some quilt clips for me? They're pretty simple. They're just these little plastic things. They just need to be sized just right. I'm like, oh, I could look that up and typey into the World Wide Web, and somebody's got quilt clips out there. So you just download the file, you put it in the 3D printer, and you watch it go, and you just wait for it to finish in about a day or so, and then pass it over to her.
Oh, no, then you sand it down. And...
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. I simplified the process. I sand it down, depending on, sometimes I paint it. For the quilt clips, they didn't really need painting, but they did need to be sanded down because the ridges can sometimes be a little bit pointy. So obviously for quilt clips, you don't want that to tear or damage any of the quilt. So we had to sand that down too.
So a quilt clip is when you're free motion quilting and you need something to hold on to your quilt roll that you're not quilting. So the part that you kind of bunch up to get out of the way, if you roll it up, you can stick it inside a quilt clip, and it kind of keeps it out of the way while you're sewing on your domestic machine or quilting on your domestic machine.
Yeah, those quilt clips were really popular when we had our booth at QuiltCon. So, Ryan, you could go ahead and make a few more of those.
Sure. Actually, I would love to.
And we'll get those online for the folks that are doing some free motion quilting. Well, that's great that you have time for your own creative pursuits while Tori's busy building her business. And so that's the good part. What about some of the struggles, some of the downsides of having a partner that's busy with kids, day job, side hustle, doing all the things?
Yeah, podcast, all that stuff. I mean, it's just like anything. Whenever your partner is pursuing an endeavor as passionately as Tori is, or any really a lot of jobs, it requires support from their partner. So, for instance, I think a good example of that was before Tori started doing her side hustle. She was a teacher, right? She was a kindergarten teacher. Now, I would on Saturdays to support her. She would always have to go down and get her classroom ready. This was before we had kids. We would go down on Saturday, and she would have to get her lessons plans ready. She had to get her room ready for the week, and so I thought my job as a husband is to be supportive, and I'm going to go down there and I'm going to help her do these things, because so that way she could get it done twice as fast, and then we could just go about and have our good, fun Saturday together.
I was also pregnant, so I needed help like moving furniture and lifting books and putting like all that kind of stuff.
That too. So the second year, yes, that too. Yep. But and likewise, I've been in the Army. Obviously, Tori's been super supportive of that, moving all around the country and taking care of the house whenever I've had to go away for whether it's trainings or deployments or anything like that. So it's not, certainly marriage isn't a one-way street. So it was never really that big a deal, I think, to be supportive, and she does great at it. So it's really fun for me too.
Good. Have you had any family vacations take a detour to a quilt shop?
I tried. I tried twice and it didn't happen.
Let's see. So I'm trying to think. So, I mean.
Well, one was the weather. So when we moved from Arizona to Michigan, we moved in June, and there was a huge rainstorm in the way. Because I was going to try to go to Missouri Star Quilt Company.
That's right.
And that was about an hour out of the way. And there was a rainstorm. We had a 3-month-old, and it was just like, okay, let's just get where we're going. So I did try that time. And I don't remember what the other one was. I think it was in California.
Yeah.
But I did try, but it never happened.
Yeah. It's tough to get on vacations with two young kids as it is. So it's we have gone on some great vacations, but the a lot of Saturdays at the quilt shop back in Arizona. That was what it was called, right? The quilt shop.
It was called So Easy Sewing.
So Easy, that's the one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of Saturdays at the So Easy. They had a little daycare, so it ended up being a quasi daycare in the back for our son. Like a few other kids back there. There's just like what is it like a storage room? They kind of converted into.
Yeah, the owner had a young daughter, so she set up a like desk and like a coloring area and a futon back there, so that her daughter had a place to play. So our son would go back there and would hang out with her daughter.
Yeah, that's a great idea for shop owners. You know, you see the at least I've seen in a few quilt shops, they'll put some nice chairs and sports magazines in the corner as the quote husband's area while their wife is wandering around the fabric. But yeah, having a designated play space or coloring.
So we could sit and color for the husband and coloring books for the husbands.
Yeah. And who knows, that might inspire somebody's quilt someday. So that's great. I can remember being on vacation when my daughter was about, we either 10 months, we took a trip when she was 10 months old and went back when she was like 3, 4, and traveled around Minnesota, and they were doing a shop hop. And so my husband was gracious enough to give me one day and chauffeur me around, and found a couple places for our daughter to play in between stops. But yeah, so I am guilty of commandeering the agenda on vacation to make sure we hit at least one quilt shop every time.
See,
but
okay, yeah, I get it. Get little collector's things from each quilt shop you go to. I don't know.
Yeah. Have you requested or been gifted a quilt just for you?
I have. I was given my Star Wars. It was like a patch quilt. It was still use it on the bed. It's just my size. So whenever we go to bed, it's my quilt. Since she can't take it from me, it is mine. It goes over just perfectly for me. She has her own that she can lay on top of the others. But that quilt is for me. So and a lot of pillowcases. A couple pillowcases. Tori did the Christmas stockings this year also. Am I missing any?
You took the Game of Thrones one, but I don't know if I could count that made for you.
Yeah, I ended up taking the game. Whatever happened? Is that in the closet somewhere?
Yeah, it's in the closet.
Yeah,
we're still unpacking from our last move.
Yeah.
You're perpetually unpacking when you're in the Army for like the last 10 years, but we're almost there here. This is like the closest we've ever been to a fully unpacked. Yeah, that was what do you call the Game of Thrones quilt? The like the style quilt. It just went at the foot of our bed, didn't it? It wasn't like.
No, it's still just a quilt.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we always just had the foot of our bed, but okay, yeah. But yeah, it's a good looking quilt.
They do make some narrow ones called bed runners. But my cat sleeps at the foot of the bed, so I wouldn't want to make a bed runner in the spot that she's gonna lay anyway.
That makes sense. To see it just scratching it up, that thing wouldn't last a week.
He's not a cat person. He doesn't understand cats.
And all the cat hair that would shed all over it. It's not.
Well, we have that problem too. We have a dog.
Yeah, it's different. It's better hair though. It's dog hair. It doesn't have all the same dander that cat hair does. It makes me super allergic.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's okay. We're separated by the computer screen. He doesn't have to worry about allergies this far away.
Yep. God bless the internet.
Yep. So how would you rate yourself on quilting knowledge? Like, can you recognize quilt blocks and talk the talk if you're at a quilt show with Tori?
Okay, so I can. She's laughing. I'm like, hold on, just hold on. I can tell the difference between now what's a machine-made quilt and what's what do you call it? The hold on, don't help me here. Meandering. Whenever I can see the I look for the stitches now.
Mhm.
Whenever I see the quilting, so I think I can tell the difference between a good quilt and just like a good handmade quilt versus like a machine made quilt based on the stitchings. Before I would never have like bothered to have looked at the stitchings, but I didn't realize you could put designs into the stitchings and stuff. Like when you made that Star Wars one, you ended up like auctioning off. You did the stitches around the Death Star, so that way it didn't go into and through the Death Star. Whereas like a machine quilt would have just like a regular bedsheet would have just gone right through. It would have just been like a bunch of grids on the Death Star. It wouldn't have looked as good.
Yeah.
So I got a little precursor for that when we were in Afghanistan. They had all these little shop owners, and one of the things they would always sell there are rugs. And all the shop owners, they would argue with you of like what's a good rug and what's a quality handmade rug. And so they would teach you how to look for the machine rugs where all the little zigzags and stuff, the way the stitchings were from the machines and the rugs there versus the handmade ones. So I kind of started there just a little bit, but then of course with Tori's expert level quilting, what I would call it, it gave me more of an appreciation for it. So yes, I would say I know a little bit that I can observe a quilt and be like, that is a good quilt.
Yeah.
So yes.
Awesome.
That's
Yeah,
my long-winded answer to that question.
We'll have to give you a scorecard at the next show, and you can critique all the.
I would actually enjoy doing that. I love having opinions on things. I'm a middle-aged white man. I have opinions on everything that I'm not the target demographic for. Disney princess movies, all of it.
Yep. Oh, and that reminds me, there was, because my daughter is 17, so we're past all the Disney princess movies, and she had a couple of the Barbie DVDs that, there's a market for every little thing that little girls want. And they used the little classical song from one of the dancing Barbie movies in a commercial like just last week. And my husband recognized it. He's like, isn't that from your favorite movie, kiddo? And she's like, why, yes, it is, Dad.
That's funny.
So
see, we're always paying attention. It doesn't look like we're paying attention, but we're totally paying attention.
Oh, don't let him fool you. He has a whole routine to let it go.
Yeah. I do. Yeah, me and my daughter do. Yeah, it's very cute.
Yeah, good. Trying to think if there were anything else.
I'd like to ask a little bit more about pros and cons. So you kind of talked about your favorite thing, where I inspired you to have your own hobby. Very sweet, by the way. Are there any other pros or any other cons that you want to talk about?
Let me think. So we went into let's see. So I looking, like I said, to expand on what I spoke about earlier about the equating my own entrepreneurship business that I had with personal training to yours. Just seeing you being able to live that dream, because I would want that experience for you. I don't want you to get older and say, man, I really wish I would have done this thing or had the been able to pursue the thing that I wanted to do. So I never wanted to be the reason why you weren't able to do anything. I never wanted to be like that kind of husband. I don't think that's being a very good husband. And I think you've always been super supportive in like my weird things that I like to get, my weird hobbies and stuff that I get into. And so I've been able to do that. So, I mean, speaking big picture, I'd say that is a pro, but of course that's like maybe not the big picture you were looking for.
Anything that comes to mind. We had not discussed this beforehand, so I'm like, learning this with you guys.
So let's see. I mean, cons is, it's a lot of time. So now we've said a lot of really positive things. I think if there was a negative, I mean, there is startup costs, or which, as a self-admitted miser and who wants to just like clutch to every like penny and be like, what are we doing? Why are we spending all this money? Of course, like you have all those discussions, but you just have to, especially the first year or so, as most businesses tend to be in the first year, there's a lot of those upfront costs, but you have those discussions. You remember your why, which is something they always talk about for any business or anything that you're passionate about that encounters some struggles. You remember your why of these things that are important to you, and you just continue to drive on and support, and then you get past it. And now there aren't those. Now we're 4 or 5 years into it, and there aren't those startup costs anymore. And she manages all of her business income, and she pays for it all out of her. I don't even know exactly how much money she makes, and that's okay because it doesn't affect our checking account at all. So I'm like, hey, I'm good. You don't have to take all these deposits out anymore. So it sounds like you're doing good to me. So and it's been a couple years now. So, but yeah, just that first year, the startup costs and adjusting to new schedules and new routines and all that. And she went through, all of that adjustment period. I was definitely probably a con, but you get past it. So I don't think just remember it's temporary. And then if it goes on for anything longer than a year or two, then you need to start having some hard discussions. But we never really got to that point because she's worked really hard at it. She's been super smart about it. So
she I've told her this too, but seeing her we were in a class together, and she took the lessons, and she was on fire in terms of implementation. So that's always one of the things that impresses me about Tori, is that she just runs with it. And I'm still over here going, oh, that might be a fun idea to do someday. And she's like launched it and making money from it already. So you need that.
Oh, you guys are great. Thank you.
Jet fuel.
It is Valentine's Day after all.
Yes.
Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah, I hope everybody can feel the love.
Yeah.
I'd also like to ask if you've seen any impact on our family.
Okay, let me I like talking about big picture stuff, so let's add another pro to the big picture thing. Is I want our kids to be able to see their mom doing these things for herself, and also getting a chance to be creative and see what it's like to work hard at something, and say hey, my free time doesn't always have to be leisure time. Free time is, you can work towards something. Like work can be a hobby or a sort of a leisure thing. And so, and I think our son, even though he's young, is seeing that a little bit.
Yeah, that was I self-published a book, and so we kind of made a big deal. I thought it was really cool when I got the first author copies and everything. And you never know how kids are absorbing things. But my daughter drew a picture on her whiteboard of, my dad does this and I do this, and mommy has a book and it's going to be in the library.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
she was.
Yeah, our son definitely loved it when she made the Christmas stocking. So whenever he sees stuff being made, that's like what he thinks. Oh, this is the big Cars blanket that he's used for quilt. Excuse me, quilt. Back to that terminology again. The Cars quilt that you made for him 5 years ago. He still loves it to death. All the other Cars stuff is kind of gone by the wayside, but he's never once talked about getting a new quilt for his bedroom. So
and he said that he said a few times that I have a sewing machine, so I can make anything.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Anything in the world. Between sewing machine and a 3D printer, we can just solve all the world's problems right here in our basement.
There you go. The McElwains take over the world. That's great. What would you think, and I'm totally copying something that I heard on the internet, What do you think are the biggest controversies in the quilt world? What have you picked up on in?
For me?
Well,
You've
what
heard
would you
about.
predict would
Oh,
be the big
She wants it.
dramas in the quilt world? How
I
much
think
do you
what
pay
she's getting at.
attention to the
oh, okay. So what would I think would be the biggest?
or what have you heard that might be the drama
Okay.
in the quilt world?
So, as with any fandom, it seems like it's a fandom. Like you have like your
Mhm.
Star Wars fandoms and your
Yep.
comic book fandoms. I think that there's definitely fandoms for different quilting companies, like LuLaRoe. No, not LuLaRoe. What's it called? The one that's all neon and bright.
To the bank.
Tula Pink. That's it. So it seems like some people just are Tula Pink like fanatics, and I know that there's a certain segment out there that says Tula Pink is trash, and I don't know why anybody would like this. I have my own opinions on it, but I'm not gonna. Should I share my opinions
We're
on
going to
that?
be Tula Pink neutral on the.
Yeah,
Or
Tula
we-
Pink
yeah, we
neutral.
want to invite her in the future. We
Okay.
can be neutral on that.
Okay,
But that
but
is.
yeah, so that's something that I definitely see, like the Tula Pink War, and
If I call it a war.
Okay, that's it. That term is overused. You're right.
Yes.
The skirmish, the Tula Pink skirmish, internet Tula Pink skirmish. It's kind of like whenever you have a smoker. You have your Traeger smokers, and you have your Rectex smokers, and you have your Green Egg smokers, and everybody has really passionate opinions about which smoker is best for your meat. When really, at the end of the day, it's just very minuscule difference, but people are gonna like be very passionate about this stuff. I think it's the same thing with a lot of these, whether they're quilting machines or long arms or quilting fabric brands and stuff like that. Everybody's going to be like super passionate and very opinionated about what their favorite is because it's 2024 and everybody's very passionate and very
I think they're
outspoken.
passionate anyway.
I mean, that's true.
2024. I think people are passionate because they're passionate about their hobby.
That's true. That's true.
Just like you.
Yeah.
I mean, he's wearing. I mean, if you're not watching the YouTube video, he is wearing a San Francisco 49er
the
sweatshirt.
NFC conference champion San Francisco 49ers who are playing in the Super Bowl. Well, when this airs, it'll be 3 days.
It'll be over, and
it'll be over. Yeah. This airs on Valentine's Day, so hopefully Super Bowl champion 49ers will keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah,
but definitely conference champions, and that counts for something.
I think that's the wrong audience.
I know. I don't want to get. I don't want to get off topic here because I will if you let me.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything else, Tori. I think we've covered the pros and the cons, and Ryan sounds like a great support to your quilt business. So we're glad you could be with us here and share a little bit about the what it's like to live in the house with all this quilting stuff.
Yeah,
it makes it very colorful. I'll say that it's very colorful. The old house we were at, we had her sewing room, and that was the most colorful room in the house, and it just really was just a really bright room to go into, which is kind of fun. Which is why, I guess, partly, why I would just go in there and just lay down, even though I was bored. It was just a nice room to be in with all the colors and stuff, with all the different fabrics. She had organized by color up on the wall and all that stuff. So
he literally would lay on the floor with his phone in front of his face and just like scroll.
And then just like until like
just be in my way because I'm trying to iron. I'm
walk over
trying
me.
to press. I'm trying to cut. I'm trying to get back to the sewing machine. And he's just in my way.
Yeah, the only thing that would stop me is I would accidentally drop the phone on my face, and then I would like get me out of whatever I was doing. And
well, to wrap this up, I wanted to ask you because one reason why we wanted to invite you was to speak to the spouses of our business owners. So, is there anything you'd want to add for them?
I would just say I think supporting your spouse is just part of the gig of being a husband, being a partner. And remember, try to see it through their eyes and what they want to support, and just think of, it kind of goes back to that golden rule of treat people how you want to be treated. So if you ever had something that you were trying to pursue, whether it's a hobby or if it's a side business, how would you want your spouse to support you? So just treat your spouse like that, and I think you'll be okay. That would be my one. I don't know if it's wisdom, but I'm not arrogant enough to call that wisdom at all. But I would just, my one piece of husbandly advice.
I like what you said about having that tough conversation.
Yeah, because I mean, it is tough. You just need to be prepared for it. It usually helps to preface those conversations like, hey, we need to have a little bit of a difficult conversation about, let's talk about whether it's money or whatever.
We've even scheduled a meeting before because we were both so busy we couldn't find a time to sit, so we scheduled a meeting and met on Zoom. we were at our respective jobs.
Yeah, that's right.
And he brought up an Excel sheet and we had to have a discussion, but we made it work.
Yep.
We made it work.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, in any situation, I think communication is key, and not expecting the other person, whether it's in a marriage or in a business type relationship, to have these expectations that you don't tell the other person. And so then you're sitting over here mad that they aren't doing what you wanted them to do, but you never told them that was what you wanted them to do. So
I can't read your mind.
Well, right. It's funny, but we kind of joke that we set up like a business meeting for our marriage, but whenever we first got married, we wrote a constitution of things, of rules that we wanted to live our marriage by. And like, that sounds like a dorky kind of a thing, but it helps. It kind of is.
Well, what it did was start a conversation, I think, and helped us set our expectations for our marriage versus like our wedding, because that was the night he proposed. So proposed, and then we're literally writing this down on hotel stationery, and we wanted to make it 12?
The Luxor. Yeah, 12, yeah. Luxor.
Hotel.
Yeah, it was the Luxor paperhead they just happened to have there by the phones.
Yeah, so we're just kind of jotting down like 12 things that we want for each other in our marriage, and it just got us thinking about it, and I think that was, I guess that was important.
Yeah, and well, I would say that we're kind of going into like marriage counseling part of the podcast, which I've no, come on, just one other thing. I'm already on a roll. I'm going to make this point, and then I'm going to shut up. So, like, sometimes like it seems counterintuitive, but you want to take the emotion out of your marriage just a little bit for these little meetings, because you need to be able to have these conversations not emotional, because obviously a marriage is based on love and all these emotions, but sometimes you've got to separate them for just a little bit to get to that business side of the marriage when it comes to numbers and what's going to work, what your future is going to look like without these heavy, hard emotions that can kind of cloud the judgment whenever you're trying to make these big decisions. And so whenever we made our little marriage business meeting, or we made our little our constitution, I think those are two ways to kind of help take just a little bit of that emotion out and just be a little bit pragmatic in our approach to our marriage, and that helps with our foundation, I think. There, I'm done.
We also did that with when you joined the military.
That was another big one. Yeah, the list. Yeah, the pros and cons list.
Yeah,
I tell that story once in a while.
It's a good one.
Yeah, that like you said, taking the emotion out of it, and we talk about that too when we are setting business goals, is that you need to look at your numbers and make decisions based on facts, not on your feelings and how you might wish things to be. Take a good hard look, and it doesn't mean that you're a bad person or a failure. It just is a data point that you have some room to improve or grow, or things are good. And yeah, that's good advice for lots of areas of life. What a great discussion. If you enjoyed this episode of Quilting on the Side, please leave us a review on whichever platform you're listening. It can be iTunes, Spotify, or even our YouTube channel.
And hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our next chat. Until then, remember to have fun in your business and do a little quilting on the side.